everyone, welcome back to Biophilia, your all-time study mate. Today we are going to continue with the third part about this chapter, that is organism and population. If you like our videos and get some help in your studies, then don't forget to like, share and subscribe to your study mate, that is Biophilia. So let's start by understanding the relationship between the previous part जहाँ पे हमने पढ़ा था about different kinds of biotic and abiotic components of the ecosystem. So जब biotic components यानी living components जब उनको रहना है, they have to survive with the abiotic components that keep on changing. So because of the change that is going on outside in the abiotic components, the organisms, they don't feel to change according to the external environment. They will try to maintain their consistency, they will try to maintain the same kind of internal environment जो उनको पहले से दिया हुआ है, despite of varying external environment. बाहर ठंडी आए, बारिश आए, गर्मी आए, but your human body temperature is going to remain at the same degree Celsius. So that is nothing but called as homeostasis. So homeostasis, generally two methods say you can maintain, that is naturally, and if naturally it is not possible, then the artificial methods can be used to maintain the homeostasis. So homeostasis जो naturally होता है, it is very easy to understand कि जब आप एक human body को, you might have experienced yourself as well every day mostly, once there is summer seasons में external temperature बढ़ जाता है, surrounding temperature बढ़ जाएगा, the stimulus will be the temperature has increased. When the stimulus has come, that increase in temperature, what will be the human body response? Response will be of sweating. So sweating का जब response होगा, there will be cooling mechanism started, and that is your response to maintain the homeostasis, right? उसी का उल्टा, जब external temperature कम हो जाएगा during winters, the external stimulus of low temperature will start the response of shivering. So आप थर-थर काँपने लगोगे because of the external temperature getting lower than your body temperature. So shivering की वजह से what will happen? Your muscles will contract and a lot of blood supply will be going to that area so that the body temperature can be maintained. So this sweating and shivering are the two mechanisms by which your internal body temperature homeostasis can be maintained. अभी ये तो बात हो गई जो actually maintain कर सकता है, but what about those premature babies who cannot maintain their own homeostasis? Then in that condition there will be a system of incubators. So incubators में there will be artificial homeostasis provided. So the temperature regulation, the oxygen levels, the carbon dioxide levels, everything will be maintained suitably inside that incubator. So that will be provided for the premature or the babies who cannot have their own homeostasis maintained. So ये सारे tubes वगैरह जो जाएंगे, that would be for that reasons. So that was about our starting for homeostasis. Now we see that as the abiotic factors changes, what the organisms are going to do to maintain their homeostasis. So the first thing that they can do is regulate. So ऐसे कुछ organisms होते हैं like all the birds and mammals, they are going to regulate their body temperatures or they will use the mechanism of regulation for maintaining their homeostasis. So वो हो सकता है they use their physiological methods or they use behavioral methods to regulate their homeostasis. So ये जो example है of regulation, that is for birds, mammals and a few vertebrates and invertebrate species. But if plants are considered, the plants do not have such mechanism of maintenance of internal temperatures. Generally mammals have a very good mechanism of regulation, and because of that the mammals have been very successful and to maintain their temperature, and because of that ability to maintain a constant body temperature, the humans can live in hot deserts. Sahara के hot temperatures maybe the person can survive, and even in icy cold regions even the humans can live because they have the greatest ability to maintain their constant body temperature. So because of that, that is sweating and shivering, both the ways the person can regulate his body temperature. So that is the first mechanism that can be used by organisms to maintain their homeostasis. The second method can be used, that is called as confer. That is majority of, that is almost 99% of animals are going to use this, and nearly all plants. So animals and plants will use this confer mechanism, and this they will be using because they cannot maintain their constant internal temperature. Because they cannot maintain their internal surroundings same for all time, they are going to be conforming, यानी जैसे external temperature change होगा या external चीज़ें change होगी, similarly they will be changing their internal surroundings so that they can maintain and they can survive in that area. So for example, if animals are going to live in salty water, so salty water में जो fishes रहते हैं, they have osmotic concentrations which will vary inside their body and outside the body. So if a fish is living in marine water में हो सकता है that your external saltiness is about say 35,000 parts, that is in the external surroundings, right? But inside the fish हो सकता है कि वो सिर्फ 5 हो, so it will be very difficult for the fish to have that osmotic concentration 5 inside and to live in the osmotic concentration of 35 outside. So this cannot happen. This can be maintained if the fish was under the category of regulation so that she can maintain the internal of 5. But since fishes cannot do these things, वो confer करते हैं, these are going to do what? The osmotic concentration is higher outside the body, then the fish will also try to use the inner osmotic concentration as 35. जब बाहर का और अंदर का same हो जाएगा, then the fish can very well live in that area. So that is why as the external changes will happen, the internal changes will also occur. So that is your flowchart over here as well. ग्राफ ऐसे ही दिखाया है that the fishes that are temperature conformers, those who cannot maintain their internal environments, unka temperature, body temperature, if you plot it on a graph, so this y-axis is going to have the body temperature of the organism and x-axis is going to have the external temperature. So जैसे ही external temperature बढ़ना शुरू हो जाएगा, in the conformers the body temperature will also increase. So that is the reason the graph is going to be like a sloping graph. जबकि once you consider the temperature regulators जो हमने पहले पढ़ा था, those will be having their constant body temperature set at some particular level. So that is the reason it will be parallel to the x-axis कि x-axis पे जो भी external temperature है वो कितना भी बढ़े, कोई भी change हो जाए, the body temperature will be at a constant level because these are regulators. So by graph also now you can very well understand what will be the changes occurring in regulators and the conformer animals. So now we had also seen कि जो regulators होते हैं उसमें mammals have been very important in successing about the all temperatures of the environment. So why don't the conformers become regulators? Conformers भी evolution के साथ साथ हो सकता था that they could have become regulators, but this was not possible because conformers जो है, this will not have that much amount of energy, because once you see the regulators को बहुत ज़्यादा energy use करनी पड़ती है. Those mechanisms are very energetically expensive, and because these are very expensive in energy, many small animals and other plants, like everything, they cannot afford to use that much amount of energy for maintaining their constant internal temperature or constant internal environment. So for that reasons, evolution may, even after they could have become regulators, they were not, because the processes are very energetically expensive and those will not have that much amount of ability to use that much energy for maintaining the internal environment. Next question can arise in your minds, that is why all the small animals are found in the polar regions. So small animals polar region में नहीं मिलेंगे because those who are small animals यानी जिनका body volume कम होता है, those will have a very large amount of surface area which can undergo heat loss and heat gain. So heat loss और heat gain जैसे ही small animals के पास larger surface area होगा related to your volume, what they will do, उनकी जो heat होगी वो बहुत जल्दी निकल जाएगी, and once the heat releases out very quickly, they will have to spend much more energy to generate body heat. And to generate much more body heat, उनको उतना खाना पीना तो है नहीं during the polar regions, so they won't not be able to survive in that regions. So because of that, the small animals will rarely be found in the polar regions. So generally you see the polar bears, the wolves, whose are polar wolves, reindeers, all these are big animals. उनका जो साइज होगा वो बहुत बड़ा होगा, and they can maintain their body temperature by expending the energy to generate body heat. So these are very two logical questions that can be asked, and these needs to be understood on the basis of what we have understood till now. So I hope inke answers will be beneficial for you for board exams as well, because these are your NCERT questions that they had been asking you, and that the answers we have provided over here. Now as we had seen कि कुछ organisms होते हैं that these are conformers, कुछ होते हैं regulators. So during evolution कुछ animals ऐसे भी थे that they tried to become regulators by evolution from conformers. So they had the ability to regulate, but over a certain limited range of environmental conditions, and beyond which they were simply being conformers. So these animals or these organisms जिनके पास dual characters थे, that sometime they could be conformers, for some parameters they could be regulators. So these were called as partial or limited regulators. So this is a NCERT diagram that is very important to understand. So conformers जो होते हैं, these conformers are the organisms that cannot maintain their internal environments, and because they cannot maintain their internal environments, वो अपने आप को external levels के हिसाब से change करेंगे. So once you understand the graphical representation, it will be a slope line. Once you consider for regulators, these can maintain their body temperatures, these can maintain their osmotic concentrations. So in a way internal जो values होंगे वो maintain हो सकते हैं at a constant level, expect the surroundings whatever is changing. So these are regulators and will have a graph that is parallel to the external factors. Partial regulators जो होंगे, these will be the ones who will have two graphs. एक part जो होगा that will be behaving like conformers, and after some parameter, once the internal thing is reached, they will start acting like regulators. So both characteristics will be found. Starting में conformers होंगे, then they become regulators, or first they will be regulators then conformers. So based on that, they would be called as partial regulators. The third thing that the organisms can do to maintain their homeostasis is going to be migration. So migration जो होगा, it is going to be like the organisms will move away temporarily to go away from the stressful habitat, and they will find some place जहाँ पे वो आराम से रह सकते हैं till the time the stressful period is over. So बस थोड़े दिन के मेहमान रहेंगे, यानी जब तक पैसों की बचत करनी है, they will go and stay at some neighbor's place or some guest's place, and then once the everything is all right, they will go back to their home. So generally ये बहुत सारे animals में और कुछ birds में होता है, and that too majorly during winter seasons. Winter seasons में बहुत सारे birds they will try to migrate into some countries which have bearable temperatures during winters. So very important bird that can be used as a migratory bird, which is going to be the birds who come to the Keolado National Park at Bharatpur in Rajasthan. वहाँ पे thousands of migratory birds आते हैं during the winters from Siberia. So Siberia is generally near Russia, जहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा बर्फ पड़ती है, and these flamingos or these Siberian cranes, these cannot survive in that extremely cold environments of the northern region. So these will migrate and come to Rajasthan during winters so that they can have hospitable temperatures at the external levels, and they can go back to their country once the winter season has been passed away. So that is migration as a third option for maintaining homeostasis. The fourth one can be suspend, that is in the cell cycle. जैसे हमने पढ़ा था about G0 phase, जहाँ पे वो cell cycle में से exit कर लेता है because the cell is not able to divide. Similarly, once the organisms are not capable of undergoing the changes or to maintaining their external and internal habitats, they will undergo the process that is suspension. That means a stage in life cycle जहाँ पे organism अपने सारे developmental, physiological, structural, biochemical या behavioral conditions को pass out कर देता है until the unfavorable conditions pass away. So generally there will be thick walled spores formation at the bacteria, funguses and lower plants, and whenever the favorable conditions return, these thick walled spores will be germinating to form the organism. Generally higher plants may they will be forming dormant structures like seeds and other vegetative propagules, जहाँ पे at the unfavorable conditions this will remain dormant, यानी वो inactive state में होंगे, and once the favorable conditions arise again back, they will discontinue their suspension and start a new life. So that is the fourth method by which the organisms can survive in the different kinds of abiotic changes. So this can be very well understood by an example that you can very well relate. So first हमने जो पढ़ा था that was regulate. So this can be related to your NEET exam as well. So NEET exam में जिन लोगों को scores कम आ रहे हैं, जिनके scores कम आ रहे हैं, they will try to work hard करेंगे, they will try to regulate themselves so that the score can increase. So that is regulation. They will try to maintain the score that they need. कुछ होंगे that is the second type of category of people, those who will be conformers, यानी वो अपने आप को ऐसे ढांचे में डाल देंगे कि okay your scores are coming around 450, coming 500, then take a subject that is suitable to you. So you change yourself according to the marks that you get. So that are the types of people who are conformers. The third type of people that you can find are migratory birds. तो माइग्रेशन जो होगा और माइग्रेट जो एक थर्ड ऑप्शन होगा, दैट इज आपको साइंस बहुत टफ है, साइंस इज टफ, व्हाट डू यू डू, ओके यू डोंट डू साइंस, यू गो टू सम अदर सब्जेक्ट. सो हो गया यू वेंट टू आर्ट्स, यू वेंट टू कॉमर्स, दैट इज माइग्रेट. आपने एक जगह छोड़ के आप दूसरी जगह चले गए टू comfort yourself. So that is the third thing to do, that is migrate. And the fourth and the last thing that can be done is suspend. You finally decide okay नहीं अब कुछ नहीं हो सकता है, 11th नहीं हुआ, 12th नहीं हुआ, you don't want to do anything, you want to drop. So वो जो drop का option होगा that is suspend. When you are ready to give the exam, you will come back, और वो जो thick walled spores बनाते हैं like bacteria and funguses, that will be your surrounding happy environment जहाँ पे आप 1 साल 2 साल drop लोगे. You will undergo the unfavorable conditions जाने दोगे, and once you feel okay now the favorable conditions have arisen, then you will germinate and give the exam. So that is the fourth thing that you can do is suspend. So ऐसे ये 4 चीज़ें हैं that you can relate to your daily life as well and understand about these 4 things. So next we see that in the different kinds of organisms, उनको जैसे stress हो रहा है and they don't want to undergo that changes, what they will do, they will escape in the time. यानी एस्केप इन द टाइम, यानी वो अपने आप को ऐसे चेंज आउट कर लेंगे कि लाइक बेयर्स जो होते हैं, द बेयर्स कैन नॉट survive very well during winters. So winters के टाइम पे they will undergo hibernation, that is whenever there will be a lot of cold environment, ये bears पूरे टाइम एक ऐसे गर्म जगह पे जाके सो जाएंगे, so that whenever the winter passes away they will come back and continue their life processes. जबकि कुछ एनिमल्स ऐसे होते हैं लाइक स्नेल्स, फिशेस, दे विल एस्केप ड्यूरिंग द टाइम ऑफ समर्स. सो जब टेम्परेचर बहुत ज़्यादा हो जाएगा दे विल अंडरगो अ प्रोसेस दैट इज कॉल्ड एज एस्टिवेशन. सो एस्टिवेशन यानी बहुत ज़्यादा गर्मी होगी तब ये अपने आप को escape करेंगे, and during the winters when the temperature is low the animals will undergo hibernation. या फिर थर्ड और एक चीज़ हो सकती है, दैट इज दे विल सस्पेंड देयर डेवलपमेंट एंड दे विल अंडरगो डायापॉज. सो दैट इज जनरली सीन इन स्मॉलर एनिमल्स, दैट इज जूप्लैंक्टॉन्स, जो जनरली लेक्स और पॉन्ड्स में मिलते हैं. सो जो बेयर्स होंगे वो क्या करेंगे, दे विल अंडरगो हाइबरनेशन, दैट इज विंटर स्लीप. सो ठंडियों के दिनों में सो जाएंगे, दैट इज हाइबरनेशन. एंड द टर्टल्स और स्नेल्स और फिशेस, these will undergo the time travel or time suspension that will be called as estivation, that is your summer sleep. So estivation को आप बोलोगे summer sleep and your hibernation will be called as winter sleep. So that is the very important point that you need to remember about summer and winter sleep. The next we see is adaptation. Adaptation यानी कुछ animals ऐसे होंगे जो अपने आप को adapt करेंगे so that they can survive in that changes of the external environment. So adaptation हो सकती है, it can be morphological, it can be physiological, it can be behavioral, so that they can survive and reproduce at the habitat. So ये जो होते हैं, these adaptations will not be epigenic, यानी वो genetically fixed नहीं होंगे. हो सकता है now the environments are like temperature around 40 years back. Okay, 40 years back the temperature was about 40 degree was too much, but nowadays if you see 40 degree has been a regular temperature during summers. So that is the changes that is occurring, and according to the changes the adaptations needs to be changed as well. So वो genetically fixed नहीं रहेगा, it will change according to the changing environment. So adaptation में first example we need to understand is about kangaroo rat. So kangaroo rat American deserts में होगा, and the northern American deserts, as you know, these are going to be very hot. So because of high temperatures these kangaroo rats are not going to have water supply. So water supply कम होने की वजह से what they will do, उनको पीने के लिए पानी नहीं है, so they will be using the fat inside their body. Once there will be fat oxidation, the water will be released as a byproduct, and that water released as a byproduct will be used for the metabolism. So first, पानी कहाँ से लाया? From the fat oxidation, the water का जो survival है उससे हो गया. Second thing, again to save water there will be concentration of urine. Concentrate इतना हो जाएगा that there is minimal water loss, and that is the second adaptation that is occurring in the kangaroo rat, so that minimum water is being excreted or is given out of the body, and even fat metabolism से the kangaroo rat is going to suffice the need of water, because deserts में पानी मिलना बहुत मुश्किल है. So these changes, the one is going to be these two, that is fat oxidation and concentration of urine, that is going to be your physiological adaptations, whereas color camouflage करके रहना, that is going to be the physical adaptation, and kicking out sand and digging big holes जहाँ पे ठंडक मिले, that is going to be behavioral adaptation. So all the three adaptations can be seen in the case of kangaroo rat, and now you have understood the differences between physical, the behavioral and the physiological adaptations. अब एक बहुत important rule होता है that many a times in exams has been asked, that is about Allen's rule. Allen's rule जो होता है, it is stating that whoever are the mammals living in the colder climates, जहाँ पे ठंड ज़्यादा होती है वहाँ पे एनिमल्स आर गोइंग टू हैव शॉर्टर ईयर्स एंड लिम्स. दैट मीन्स इन अ वे उसकी जो एक्सट्रीमिटीज़ होंगी उसको छोटा रखना है, सो दैट मिनिमम हीट लॉस हैज़ बीन ऑब्जर्व्ड. So that is going to be your generation से धीरे धीरे करके finally the organisms have been developed such a way that these have shorter ears and limbs. So you can see in the photograph as well. एक photograph में है, this is the tropical region. Tropical region में what can you find, that the ears are going to be much more larger and the extremities will also be longer, whereas in the colder regions में all the limbs will be very short, ना के बराबर दिखेंगे, उनका जो मुंह होगा वो भी flat हो जाएगा. The ears will also become shorter, and that is going to be nothing but Allen's rule, which is very important to understand with the point of examination. So जैसे अभी हमने एलेंस रूल देखा था, सिमिलरली देर आर 3 more rules that has been asked in exams previously. So the one is going to be Jordan's rule, जो state करता है that number of vertebrae are going to increase in the fishes as there will be increase in latitude. So जैसे ही latitude increase होगा, number of vertebrae will be increasing, and because of that it is also called as law of vertebrae. The third law that we see coming in exams, that is Bergmann's law, that states that the organisms living at higher altitudes, यानी जो heights पे रहते हैं, that is generally polar animals, you can understand. So polar animals जो होंगे, जो high altitudes पे रहते हैं, they should be lot more larger, they should be thicker than those who live in equator. So Bergmann's rule you can understand from this images. जो tropic area पे bear मिलेगा, that will be much more leaner, वो बहुत it will be comparatively leaner than the case of polar bears living in the higher altitude. The fourth law or the fourth rule that is going to state is that organisms will be much more pigmented, and the pigmentation will be found at the animals who live near the equator, जबकि they will be less pigmented when they are near the poles. So even that can be understood by this photograph. Polar regions के जो animals होंगे, these will be generally white in color or they will have less pigments, whereas the ones living in the equator, that is in tropic areas, उनको black या brown या ऐसे dark pigmented colors के होंगे. That is your last rule, that is Glogger's rule. So Bergmann's rule and Glogger's rule can be very well understood by this example of two bears, that is the tropical bear होगा black bear and one that is your polar bear. The next and the third example for adaptations is going to be desert plants. So desert में again, as we saw the example of kangaroo rat, वैसे ही desert plants are also going to give some morphological adaptations. So desert plants में कौन से changes होंगे? They will be morphological changes that occurs, and these morphological changes include of thick cuticle found on their leaf surface, यानी उनके leaves बहुत ज़्यादा मोटे होंगे, and because of that the water loss can be prevented. The stomatas will be arranged at dip peaks so that the water loss through transpiration can be prevented. The photosynthetic pathway जो generally हमारे surrounding areas में होगा, that will not be present. Instead of that, a camp, the new type of photosynthetic pathway will be available in the desert plants, so that the stomata can remain closed during the daytime and active during the night, so that night time में जब temperature कम होगा comparative to the daytime, वहाँ पे transpiration भी कम होगा. So that is photosynthesis pathway will also be changed. And the last thing that can be done for the adaptation, that is some plants like opentia में the leaves will be modified into spines, that is उनका surface area कम कर दिया जाएगा to minimize the water loss. And once the opentia leaves have been reduced to needle like spines, अब उनको photosynthesis करने के लिए कोई green part चाहिए. So the green part will be nothing but the stem. So the stem will become flattened and green in color, and it will be called as phyllodes. So you have seen the chapter about morphology of flowering plants. वहाँ पे भी also we had discussed about the phylloclad. So that can now perform the photosynthetic activity because the leaves has been modified into spines. So these can be some of the adaptations that the desert plants will have to conserve water and survive in the hot, dry conditions of desert. The next we see is in the polar seas जो animals रहते हैं बहुत icy cold water में swim करना पड़ता है, all those animals will have a thick layer of fat which is called as blubber. So this blubber will be found in all aquatic animals that live in polar sea like seals and whales or dolphins or even your walrus. All these will have this blubber and they will act as insulators, and that will help them to reduce the loss of body heat और उसकी वजह से उनको गर्माहट मिलेगी once they are living in that icy cold area. The fifth adaptation can be used is Antarctic fishes जो होती है, those who live below the 0 degree temperature. उनको इतने ठंड में हो सकता है that their body fluids will be freezing. So if you imagine to place a human below 0 degrees Celsius for a very long time, हो सकता है उसके बॉडी फ्लूइड्स, उसका खून, उसका पानी सब जमना शुरू हो जाएगा. So that can also happen in the case of fishes, but these fishes will not have this problem because they will be having special anti-freeze solutes which will keep their body away from freezing. So again that is the adaptation जो उनको मिला है because of their habitat that is always below 0 degree Celsius. The next example can be used, that is many marine invertebrates and fishes are going to live at higher depths. वो इतने ज़्यादा डेप्थ पे रहते हैं that the pressure will be about more than 100 times than compared to the atmospheric pressure, because atmospheric pressure जो हमारे ऊपर होता है, once you go deep down into the seas or oceans, the height of the ocean that you go down will also be involved in the adding pressure to it. So you have studied in physics as well कि जैसे जैसे आप डेप्थ में जाओगे pressure will increase. So that pressure will also be applicable for the invertebrates and marine fishes. So this will also be taken care of because of the adaptation that they follow, and now they can survive in that high pressure areas. The seventh very important point that you need to understand for adaptation, which is going to be adaptation of physiological adaptation. So this physiological adaptation can be seen in humans. So humans जो high altitudes पे रहते हैं या once they go for tourist areas at high altitudes, so high altitudes पे because of the partial pressure of oxygen will be low. So because of low atmospheric pressure there will be low oxygen, और जब ऑक्सीजन की कमी हो जाती है your body will start to give you some symptoms such as you will be having nausea, you will be having fatigue, heart palpitation, so that the body can maintain its oxygen requirement. So in these kinds of symptoms आपकी body कैसे respond करेगी once you are staying for like 6 months 8 months आप ऐसे regions पे रह रहे हो where the external pressure of oxygen is reduced. So in that conditions what will be the response? There will be increased RBC production so that oxygen can be transported efficiently even in that lower partial pressure. Then the decrease in the binding capacity of binding capacity of hemoglobin, and even increasing the breathing rate so that every time a new oxygen will be coming in small quantities but many times. So many times small quantities will also help to accommodate that low levels of oxygen. So these are nothing but called as physiological adaptations जो generally organisms adapt कर लेते हैं during these kinds of stressful conditions. So it will be an example of physiological adaptation. The eighth one is an example wherein the animals which are living in areas जहाँ पे 100 डिग्रीज से भी ज़्यादा टेम्परेचर होता है, ऐसे टेम्परेचर्स कहाँ मिलेंगे? You will be having in hot springs, you will be having in deep seas hydrothermal vents. So both of the examples have been shown over here. The first one is of hot springs and the next one is for the deep sea hydrothermal vents. So hydrothermal vents underwater होंगे, so these will be very close to the earth's surface, earth's lava crust, और वहाँ से this will be having the hydrothermal vents जहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा गर्मी होगी, and the humans or other animals who do not have the adaptation will not be able to live in that environment. So because of the physiological functions which are going to occur at a very narrow range of temperature, that is for humans generally 37 degrees Celsius. So you have studied about enzymes as well. Enzymes function करने के लिए you need to have optimum temperature, you need optimum pH, everything needs to be in the range. So optimum temperature to 37 degrees hoga because normal human temperature is that much, and if you try to place human in such hot water springs or hydrothermal vents, they will not be able to live in that areas for very long. So microbes can do it because they have adaptation. So one example is archaebacteria that can flourish in such hotter conditions. The last example about adaptations is going to be about desert lizards. Desert lizards जो होते हैं, again they will be having the physiological ability to cope up with the extreme temperatures. So extreme temperatures जब हो जाते हैं, बहुत ज़्यादा धूप हो रही है, the desert have become very hot enough, what will happen? The lizard will move into some shady area, and once they move to some shady area the temperature will start to decrease, और जब उसे डेजर्ट लिज़ार्ड को लगेगा कि नहीं अभी टेम्परेचर हैव बीन ड्रॉप्ड बिलो माय नॉर्मल टेम्परेचर, what it will do, it will go and bask in the sun, it will absorb some heat, and then once the body temperature at a comfortable position, then it will be staying there. जैसे ही वापस गर्मी होने लगेगी it will move into the shade, and similarly जैसे ही ठंडी गर्मी changes होते रहेंगे, physiologically the desert lizards will be going into shade and then again going into sun to get some heat. So that way physiological adaptations can be seen in the case of desert lizards. So that was all about the responses to abiotic factors. So many types of responses can be seen and now we have discussed them in detail as well. अगर आपको इससे कोई help मिली हो, then don't hesitate to hit the like button, share it to your friends as well so that they can also learn about it in very much ease, and finally subscribe to our channel so that you can be a part of our family. And till then we come back next with the chapter video. Till then, keep studying, keep smiling. Bye bye everyone for now. Thank you.